sound of gravel crunching beneath tires woke me before the alarm clock ever had the chance. I looked out the window, groggy, still halfway between a dream and reality. But when I saw the flicker of red and blue lights reflecting off the glass, my stomach sank like a stone. 2 squad cars sat in my driveway, doors open, officers stepping out with tense shoulders and hands hovering near their weapons. That kind of body language only meant one thing. Whoever sent them had made me out to be dangerous, and I already knew who that whoever was, the HOA. More specifically, Karen Williams, the self-crowned president of our neighborhood's little homeowners dictatorship. I threw on my boots and stepped outside, squinting against the early morning light. The grass was still slick with dew, the air cool, but none of that mattered when 3 pairs of eyes pinned me like I was already guilty of something. "Sir," the lead officer said, one hand lightly resting on his holster, "we've had reports of noncompliance. The HOA claims you've resisted lawful enforcement. They've given us instructions." His voice trailed off, and for a second he seemed uncomfortable with his own words. Then he cleared his throat and continued. "They told us, if you resist, we're authorized to use force. Lethal if necessary." For a moment I thought I'd misheard him. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "Shoot if I resist," I repeated slowly, making sure I hadn't lost my mind. The officer glanced at the other 2, then nodded stiffly. "That's what we were told." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. The HOA, a bunch of clipboard warriors obsessed with lawn heights and paint shades, had escalated things so far that now actual law enforcement was at my doorstep with guns practically drawn. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was dangerous. I raised my hands slowly, palms out, showing I wasn't holding anything. "Officers, I'm not resisting. I haven't broken any laws, but I'd like to know something. Who exactly gave you that order?" The lead flipped through his notes. "Karen Williams, HOA president." He said it with the same tone you'd use for a county commissioner or judge, which only made the absurdity worse. Behind him, blinds rattled. I could see neighbors peeking out their windows, faces pale in the glow of flashing lights. To them, I probably looked like a criminal, a man finally caught after weeks of whispers about how I'd been fighting the HOA. That was exactly what Karen wanted: humiliation, control. She thrived on fear, on making people believe she was untouchable. But what she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this for months. Every fine she'd slapped me with, every violation she claimed I committed, I had documented it. Every time her so-called enforcers trespassed on my property to measure my grass, to peek at the paint on my shutters, to snap pictures of my truck parked in the driveway instead of hidden away, I had proof. Even when they crossed the line further, trying to sabotage my yard with chemicals to create violations, I had caught them on camera. I hadn't said much, not to the neighbors and not to Karen, but I'd been collecting everything like puzzle pieces, and those pieces were locked up safe, hidden right under the soil of my yard. "Officers," I said, keeping my voice steady, "before this goes any further, I want to show you something." The lead narrowed his eyes. "Sir, don't make any sudden moves." I nodded. "I won't. But what I have will explain exactly what's going on here." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. My boots squished in the wet grass as I walked slowly across the lawn. Every step felt like a gamble, like one twitch from the officers might end this before it began. But I kept calm. That's what Karen didn't understand about me. She thought intimidation would make me crumble. She thought fear was enough to control me. But fear only sharpens resolve. The old shovel leaned against the shed, dirt still clinging to the blade from the last time I'd worked the garden. I picked it up, the metal cool and solid in my hands. The officers tensed, hands tightening on their weapons. "It's just a shovel," I said calmly. "You'll see why." By now, more neighbors had come outside, drawn by the flashing lights. A small crowd gathered, murmuring, their eyes darting between me, the police, and the growing shadow approaching from the street. Karen. She was strutting down the sidewalk like a queen inspecting her kingdom, her high heels clacking sharply on the pavement. She had that same smug smirk she always wore when she thought she'd finally cornered someone. In one hand, of course, was her precious clipboard, the symbol of her imagined power. Behind her trailed two of her hired enforcers, big men in black polos with HOA patches sewn on the chest. Their broad frames and blank stares were meant to intimidate, but to me they looked like shadows clinging to someone else's authority. "Don't listen to him," Karen shouted before I could even put shovel to dirt. "He's a liar, a manipulator. He's resisting right now. Look at him with that weapon." The officers didn't move, though. They were watching me, waiting. I planted the shovel into the ground and pushed with all my weight. The soil gave way easily, soft from the dew and rain from days past. One scoop, then another. Karen's voice grew shriller, desperate. "Stop him! He's hiding something. He's dangerous." But for once, no one was listening to her. The shovel struck something solid with a dull thunk. My pulse quickened. I dug faster, ignoring the dirt spraying onto my boots, until a corner of hard plastic broke through the soil. I crouched, heaving it upward, and dragged a weatherproof storage bin into the open. Mud streaked its sides, but it was intact. With neighbors watching, officers waiting, and Karen fuming, I unlatched the lid. Inside, perfectly dry, sat stacks of files, manila folders, and a handful of USB drives. Months of evidence, documented and preserved. I pulled out the first folder and held it high. "This," I said, voice carrying over the yard, "is what your HOA president doesn't want you to see." Even from where I stood, I could see Karen's face drain of color. As the officers kept their distance, I asked for one simple request. "Before you do anything, let me show you something." Maybe it was my steady tone, maybe the unease in their eyes, but they agreed. Slowly, I walked across my yard, the grass still damp with morning dew, and grabbed a shovel I'd left leaning against the shed. I began digging. The neighbors whispered, some stepping out onto porches, confused about why I'd suddenly started tearing up my own lawn under police watch. Karen herself arrived moments later, stomping down the sidewalk in heels far too sharp for the gravel. Her arms flailed as she shouted, "Don't listen to him! He's a liar, a criminal. He's resisting us right now." But the officers held her back, perhaps sensing something wasn't right. The shovel struck something solid with a dull clunk. I dug faster, pulling out a weatherproof plastic bin I'd buried weeks earlier. With dirt on my hands, I dragged it into the driveway and pried it open. Inside were files, photos, and USB drives, everything I had collected. I pulled out the first stack and held it high. Copies of HOA meeting notes, handwritten edits ordering harassment fines, targeting specific families, emails showing Karen and her board telling private enforcers to patrol properties, even trespass, in exchange for kickbacks. And worst of all, a signed letter from Karen herself, instructing their private security to use force if homeowners resisted. Gasps spread through the crowd of neighbors now gathering in larger numbers. One officer stepped forward, eyes narrowing as he scanned the documents. Another officer opened the USB drive on his patrol car's laptop and found videos, grainy night vision clips I'd captured of HOA enforcers sneaking onto my property, pouring what looked like chemicals on my yard, trying to stage violations. Karen's face went pale. "Those are fake. He's making it up," she screamed, but her voice wavered. The officers didn't move to arrest me. They moved toward her. The tide had turned, and fast. With the evidence in plain sight, the officers separated Karen from the crowd, demanding explanations she couldn't give. Neighbors who had long feared the HOA's reach stepped forward one by one, voices rising with their own stories. "They fined me $500 for having a garden. They trespassed into my backyard. They threatened to foreclose on us if we didn't pay bogus fees." The dam had broken. Karen shrieked, trying to keep her composure. But the weight of the truth was too heavy. Her enforcers, seeing the walls closing in, slipped away quietly into the night, abandoning her to face the consequences alone. As more squad cars arrived, the evidence bin was loaded into the trunk of a police cruiser. Karen, the once untouchable queen of the HOA, was placed in handcuffs as her carefully crafted empire crumbled in front of the very people she thought she ruled. Her high heels clicked uselessly against the pavement as she begged the officers not to do this, that she was just protecting the neighborhood. But the neighborhood no longer believed her. I stood there, sweat and dirt streaking my face, watching as the nightmare we'd all endured was finally dragged into the light. The same officers who had arrived under orders to shoot if I resisted now gave me a firm nod of respect. One of them muttered, "You saved a lot of people today." For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. My yard was torn up, my property scarred, but what I had unearthed mattered more than grass or fences. I had dug up the truth. And with that truth, the HOA's reign of fear was over.